Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, Vicky, Sandy, Marianne, Peggy. Thank you so much for organizing, and others at Informed Women for organizing this great luncheon. I'm thrilled to be here. I appreciate it. And I'm going to be talking about my journey to becoming a US citizen and how I came to the United States from Bangladesh. And so, thank you for the kind introduction. So, when I'm up on a stage and I think, okay, how should I introduce myself? Should I talk about my professional qualifications, my hobbies, how I should highlight who I am? Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm a proud American. That's my identity. And let me start talking about my journey. So, immigration is something, a topic that I'm very passionate about. Obviously, it's whenever you turn on the TV, you're hearing people talk about immigration because of the border crisis, and I'm going to be talking about that too. And so, anytime I have an opportunity to share my story, I'm more than happy to do that because I think it's important. It's important for people to hear from legal immigrants who came to the United States, pursued citizenship, because those stories are important versus the illegal entry that we see, millions and millions of people who are walking into our country and they are expecting government-funded benefits. So last year, I had a wonderful opportunity to appear on Fox and Friends on Fox News. And Rachel Duffy, who we all know, she was the host. And I was invited to talk about my views on immigration. And so if you want to check out the video segment, I actually can share with you the link. I have my website, tausifanam.net, where I have posted the link to the video. But as of today, my website is kind of going through some construction phases, so it should be available over the next 2 or 3 days. But I'll highlight my video, I'll highlight my website address towards the end so you can access the video. Now, let's go back to the basics. Why do we need to talk about immigration? Why does it matter? Let me give you the answer here. Because more than 750 million people worldwide would like to migrate to another country if they could. And this is according to Gallup. And so, when you see the population of the world and 750 million people worldwide would like to migrate to another country, then we understand that worldwide people are thinking about going to a different country and settling down. And that's why immigration, not just in the US, all over the world, it's an extremely important topic. And the United States happens to be the most desirable destination for potential migrants. Out of all the countries in the world, and approximately 150 million adults worldwide would want to make the United States their home. I mean, think about the US population. Is it what, 330 million or so, roughly? And so, 150 million adults would like to come to the United States from all over the world. Now, can we let everyone in? We cannot, right? So, now, let me tell you that, and I'm sure some of you have encountered this, the liberals, the far-left individuals, they like to say that we are an anti-immigrant country. Have you heard that before? Whenever you talk about securing the border, the liberals will accuse us of being anti-immigrant. Well, let me share with you some data which will basically answer if we're anti-immigrant or not. This is from the Yearbook of Immigration Statistics. It's a public document. It's available on the Department of Homeland Security's website. And if you look at from 2015 to 2021, the number of persons obtaining lawful permanent resident status, you see, in most of the years, it's over 1 million people. And so what it means is, every year we are granting permanent residency status to approximately 1 million people. Now, how can somebody call that country anti-immigrant, right? So I just look at the data and the statistics, and it'll answer the question. So when liberals say, oh, you're anti-immigrant, I just say, well, go check out the Department of Homeland Security's website. We're giving 1 million people every year, so 1 million foreign-born individuals are getting the permission to live and work in the United States every year. And so, let me show you some other data here. Every year, as you can see, several hundreds of thousands of individuals are becoming naturalized US citizens. So in 2015, it was 730,000. In 2018, 761,000. 2020, 628,000. So these are the number of people who are becoming US citizens every year. Several hundreds of thousands. And so, looking at what's true versus what's false, when people say the United States is an anti-immigrant country, that's false. Because the publicly available data published by the United States government will tell you, no, we're not. We are an immigrant-friendly country. In fact, we are a nation of immigrants. Here's something else. The United States of America welcomed more than 7.6 million naturalized citizens over the last decade. That cannot be an anti-immigrant country. So now let me switch and talk about myself, where I am from. Who knows where Bangladesh is located? You know that, you know that. Wonderful. So Bangladesh is a country in South Asia, and that's where I was born and raised. I came to the United States when I was 19 years old, so I came as an adult. And so, just so you can understand how big the country is geographically, it's slightly larger than Pennsylvania and New Jersey combined, and it's slightly smaller than Iowa. And the estimated population is 167 million people. So, once again, US population is 330 million roughly, right? 167 million people in a very small country. And so it's the 8th most populated country in the world, that's Bangladesh. And in fact, the city where I was born and raised, can you guess what the population of the city is? I grew up in the capital city of Dhaka. Any guess? It's 22 million people. I looked it up a few days ago. So one of the most densely populated cities in the world, and obviously one of the most densely populated countries in the world, that's Bangladesh. And in fact, because of how many Bengali-speaking people there are in the world, Bengali, which I guess some of you may have heard me speak Bengali as I was talking to my mom today, it's one of the top 10 most spoken languages in the world because of the number of Bengali speakers. So a little bit of history about Bangladesh. The country gained independence in 1971. So it's a fairly new country. Prior to that, it was part of Pakistan. So it was East Pakistan, and the Pakistan that you know now was West Pakistan. So the two pieces of land were not connected because there's India in between, but it was one country, West and East Pakistan, and then East Pakistan became Bangladesh after the War of Liberation. So Bangladesh has a parliamentary form of government very different from what we have here, and the chief of the state is the president, but the true power is with the prime minister, who is the head of government, and the currency is taka. That's the name of the currency. Now, here's me. I grew up in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, and my hobbies included reading. I still do a lot of reading, collecting stamps, playing cricket. How many of you are familiar with cricket, the sport? I see quite a few people. It's a very interesting sport. And so I grew up playing cricket, and I went to English medium schools. What it means is, in Bangladesh, there are two mediums. So one is the general medium or Bengali medium, in which all the instruction is delivered in Bengali. So whether you're studying economics, physics, history, everything is taught in Bengali. and then there's one period of English where students learn English. But I went to an English medium school, which means the school, all the courses, everything was taught in English. All my textbooks were in English. And then there was one period when we studied Bengali language and literature. And so the curriculum of education that I followed was the British curriculum, quite different from the US version. So I appeared for what's called the O and A level exams, the ordinary and advanced level exams, before entering the university. And then I arrived in the United States after getting the immigrant visa in 2007. And right after coming to the US, I got my green card. And for me, it was a little interesting because I had completed 1 year of university, so my freshman year in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, at a university called North-South University. It's a private university. And so I was a transfer student, and I transferred my credits. So it was an international transfer, but because right after coming to the US, I had my green card, so I was a domestic student. So I had international credits transferred, but I was a domestic student. And then I was a spring transfer, which is, I think, not very common. Most people, I think, transfer students, they start in the fall, but I was a spring transfer. And after coming to the US, I pursued my Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Master of Public Affairs from UW-Madison. And so, every immigrant has a story, no matter where they're coming from. And if you ask them, like, what's the biggest challenge you faced? Everyone will have different answers, right? Somebody will say, well, I had difficulty understanding the culture and the tradition and the customs. Some people will say, well, I had to learn the laws and rules of the United States. And a lot of people might say, I had language barriers, so I had to learn English. Now for me, those were not real big issues because I grew up speaking English. English is my second language, but I spoke English during my childhood. And so, but one thing I will tell you, one of the challenges I faced was because I went to a school that followed the British curriculum, and because Bangladesh, even before it became Pakistan, it was a British colony, that whole area, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, it was British colony. The British had their colonial rule. And so over there, all the spellings are British spellings. So we spell color with C-O-L-O-U-R. Same with favor. And a lot of the terms are British language terms. And so I share this funny story, which my mother has heard probably 1 million times already. So I went to the mall one day, and I was looking for, I was looking to go to another floor. So I went up to a sales associate and I asked, which way is the lift? And she didn't understand what I was saying. I said, I'm looking for the lift because I'm going to go to the upper floor. And then I realized that I should say it's elevator, not lift. So, in everyday language, there were all those terms like pedestrian crossing versus zebra crossing. Have you heard that? Because, it's black and white, so, in Bangladesh they call it zebra crossing. And here we call it pedestrian crossing. So there were all these little things that I had to change, but it was fun doing that. I may still have some of those terms left over that I still use. So that's one thing that I had to change, but that was not my biggest challenge. You know what my biggest challenge was after coming to the US? Understanding the American healthcare system. And I can't claim that I still understand it fully, but I learn every day. So I think a lot of people struggle with that, don't you think? Understanding how the healthcare system works. So in Bangladesh, where I was born and raised, the healthcare system is an out-of-pocket model. So you just pay for healthcare services as you would pay for food or clothes or furniture. You go to the doctor, you pay your bill. And they have insurance, property insurance, life insurance, but the health insurance market, I think it is growing now a little bit, but it's nothing like here. Most people don't have health insurance. They just pay for care as they go. And obviously, quality is an issue, you get what you pay for. So those who can afford to pay more, they have access to better services versus those who can't. But that's a whole different topic. And so understanding the American healthcare system was my biggest challenge because I did not understand the in-network, out-of-network. I just thought if I purchased insurance, I could go see any doctor. But that wasn't the case. And then co-insurance and deductible and out-of-pocket max and prior authorization, I had such a challenging time figuring it out. And growing up in a family that was heavily in pharmaceuticals, healthcare was not an issue for me. We could pretty much access any doctor, get any kind of care, any services. And so for me, that was the biggest shock, that I have to figure out the US healthcare system. So how do I do that? Now, I soon found out that browsing on the internet isn't gonna help much, okay? Obviously, I did, looked up different terms, search engines, but I said, you know what, I need a more concrete pathway forward to understand the American healthcare system. So it all started with one healthcare policy course that I took when I was an undergrad student. And then soon afterwards, I found that I'm really interested in it. It's not just, okay, I have to figure out healthcare for myself and for my mom, but no, I actually want to know how the system works. So I ended up pursuing a Master of Public Affairs degree at UW-Madison, focusing on healthcare policy. Some of my friends focused on energy policy, some were more interested in urban and regional planning, some wanted to learn energy policy and transportation and education policy, but I focused on healthcare policy. And very soon, I got a health policy internship at the Wisconsin Medical Society, the largest association of doctors in Wisconsin. And while I was at the Medical Society, I worked on a policy paper on physician workforce. This was more than 10 years ago. And back then, and still it is an issue now, we talk about, okay, do we have enough doctors? Do we have enough nurses? Do we have a sufficient medical workforce to address the needs of the population? And now that we have an aging population, the needs are going to grow, but do we have enough medical professionals? So I did a lot of research on that while I was at the Medical Society, wrote a policy memo, and then right after that, I got a very prestigious project assistantship with the Evidence-Based Health Policy Project. So I was going to the La Follette School of Public Affairs for my master's degree, and while I was going to school full-time, I worked 20 hours every week, 10 hours at the Population Health Institute at UW-Madison, and 10 hours at the Wisconsin Legislative Council, which is one of the nonpartisan service agencies that provides service to the legislature. So it serves the legislature, but it's nonpartisan, it's a government agency. So let's say a state senator or a state assembly person has a question about a law or a rule or a policy. They reach out to the Wisconsin Legislative Council, and it's a body of attorneys. So I was one of the 2 or 3 non-attorneys in that office. And so the attorneys there will do the research, write a memo, and then present it in a confidential manner to the legislator. And the rules are so straight. So let's say a Republican state senator reaches out to the Legislative Council. The Legislative Council will present that memo only to that legislator. No other Republican legislators will know, no other Democrats will know. Now the legislator can take that memo and make it public, but information is provided in a very confidential manner. So very professional environment. They staff all the different committees that you see doing different hearings. And so I learned a lot, and my focus was long-term care. That's what I worked on. I told you, healthcare. So whatever I did had some kind of connection to healthcare. And so I was working on long-term care policy, and in fact, my biggest highlight during my time at Wisconsin Legislative Council, this was back in 2012, it was writing a memo on long-term care policy, on policies governing nursing home care And I presented that memo as a graduate student, as a project assistant at Legislative Council, live on Wisconsin Eye in front of a legislative committee, and then I answered questions from the people on the panel. So that was my highlight. I was very excited to do that. And then, after graduation, I worked at United Way of Dane County for a few months, but after that, I joined the Wisconsin Department of Health Services as a program and policy analyst. So I was in a part of a team that basically oversaw all the HMOs that contract with the state to serve the Medicaid population. And I was there from 2013 to 2014, which was an interesting time because every 2 years, I don't know if the rules have changed, but every 2 years, all the HMOs that contract with Medicaid, they go through their recertification. So they have to be recertified. And any new HMO has to be certified that's applying to contract with the state. And so I sat with applications this thick, looking at the HMOs and their their networks, their provider networks, and it's a lot of detailed work because I had to sit and look at an HMO and their provider network, and I understood what the provider network meant by then. So we have to look up, okay, what's the population that's going to be served? Okay, in this county, how many providers do they have? How many primary care doctors? How many psychiatrists? How many dentists? And do they have enough? So we had to look at ratios, we had to look at distances, because we wanted to make sure that the patients were within a certain distance of the providers. And then we had to understand their appeals and grievance process, and then their computer systems, how they were backing up data. I mean, it's a lot. Everything that you need to know about an HMO before certifying them to serve Badger Care, to serve Medicaid population. I was part of a team that did that. And so I learned a lot, and obviously by then I was deeply involved in healthcare. And if you remember, 2013, 2014 was also an interesting time because there was that big question, will Wisconsin accept the Medicaid expansion, for Obamacare? So I saw all of that interesting movements and actions from the inside. And then 2014 was a major year for me because I received a Trailblazer Award from the Urban League of Greater Madison for my public service. Because by then, thank you. So one thing led to another, and it all started with, okay, I have to figure out how health insurance works because it's needed for my survival, and obviously me and my mom both. And that led me to take a course, and then an internship, a project assistantship, a job after another, and I was deeply involved in healthcare, and it led me to that point when I got a Trailblazer Award for my public service. And 2014 was also a major year because, as my mom already mentioned, that was the year when we both became US citizens. Thank you. And I want to share with you the Oath of Allegiance. Not many people have read that. Naturalized US citizens, they know this. But I want you to understand how serious this oath is. I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform non-combatant service in the armed forces of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, so help me God. That's what I had to, that's the oath, that's what I had to recite in front of a judge during my nationalization ceremony, giving up all your allegiance to the country that you were born in. And that's serious, and obviously, you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So I take this seriously every single day of my life. It was a very emotional day for me and also for my mom. We had 2 different dates for nationalization, and I just wanted you to know the words of the Oath of Allegiance and how proud I am to be an American. And so this is the nationalization ceremony. You can see there with the hand over my heart, and then that's my nationalization certificate, if you can see that. And there's my mom next to me holding the flag. And so my ceremony was in November of 2014, and my mom's nationalization ceremony was in December of 2014. So there she is in the federal building with her certificate, with her nationalization certificate. And so 2014, obviously a very important year in my life. I became a US citizen, and I got the Trailblazer Award, but something else happened. You may recognize this individual, this great leader. I met Senator Ron Johnson. So me and my mom, we met Senator Ron Johnson at the state convention, GOP convention in Milwaukee. This was May of 2014. And long story short, he hired me as his regional director in southern Wisconsin. And in addition to being the regional director in southern Wisconsin, I got the new responsibility of handling all healthcare policy issues in the state. So Medicare, Medicaid, from anywhere in the state, when constituents contact our office, all those cases come to me. So it all started with struggling to understand the US healthcare system, and now I'm working in a Senate office doing healthcare policy work, helping constituents with Medicare and Medicaid issues. So it's all about the willpower, the willingness. So here's the United. So I received, after I became a U.S. citizen, Senator Ron Johnson. He flew a flag at the U.S. Capitol, and that flag was presented to me in honor of me becoming a citizen of the United States. And I also got that certificate, which you see up on the screen. It's signed by him. It says, the flag was flown for Tausipanam at the request of Senator Ron Johnson in honor of his achievement of becoming a citizen of the United States of America. It's one of the most beautiful and precious things that I have ever received. So I wanted to share that with you. If anyone wants to watch a video of my nationalization ceremony, a wonderful colleague of mine, she captured, I had several colleagues from the office, from Senator Johnson's office, who attended my nationalization ceremony. And my colleague Renee Riddle, she captured the ceremony on video, and she shared that video with me. So I have posted that on YouTube. I can share the link. Vicky, I'll share it with you if you want to share with the whole group. So I'll send it. And so this is what I want to highlight. Let's see. Oh, did I skip this? Okay, so this is the screenshot from my video, which I'll share with you. So, as I always highlight, right now, unfortunately, there are 2 pathways to enter the United States. One legal, one illegal, which we see at the southern border. And the 2 pathways are very different, and I think it's important to highlight the differences between the 2. When you follow the legal pathway, you have to be patient because it takes time. And my mom can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when I was young, when I was a little boy, and our application was submitted for immigrant visa, it took 11 years, right? 11 years to get a call from the embassy to appear for an interview. So you have to be patient. And then after going through the process, after arriving on US soil in 2007, I became a citizen in 2014. So the legal process takes time. There's a lot of paperwork, and there are rights and responsibilities. Like, people talk about voting rights all the time. It's my right to vote. It's not just my right to vote, it's also my responsibility to vote. And so green card holders, immigrants who are legal immigrants but not yet US citizens, they have rights and responsibilities. And then after you become a US citizen, you have rights and responsibilities. And the legal pathway gives people a strong foundation. And it opens up lots and lots of opportunities. I am working in the US Senate. And so, people can work in state government, local government, federal government, in the nonprofit, in the private sector. The sky is the limit. And so the legal pathway opens many doors versus the illegal pathway. There's a lot of uncertainty. People who are crossing the border, entering the United States, they don't know much about their future because they don't have legal status. And there's constant fear of legal consequences. And many people, unfortunately, are exploited, women and children, and even men. And there are limited opportunities because illegal immigrants can't apply for the jobs that legal immigrants and citizens can. And so I like to highlight the differences, and that's what I talked about during my Fox News interview. I said, unfortunately, right now there are two pathways, legal and illegal. And people take the shortcut, but the shortcut is the bad option. And so, let me talk about the N-400 application for naturalization. Please look it up. I highly encourage you to do that. Just go on the internet, look up N-400 application for naturalization. So the application is several pages, but by the time you properly print it out with supplemental information that you have to provide, it can be this big. Okay. And if I talk about the application, just go step by step, it's probably going to take me easily an hour just to do that, so I won't. But let me tell you, a legal immigrant who's applying for citizenship, from the moment you arrive on US soil, you have to do a lot of record keeping, hoping for the day when you're going to be filling out the N-400 application. Why? Because they ask you about how many trips outside the US you made, how many trips outside the US lasted more than 24 hours. I mean, you have to do a lot of record keeping. Every time a legal immigrant who's not yet a US citizen changes address, you have to let USCIS know within a certain number of days that you've moved. And so it's important to remember all those little details, and people will have to provide details about themselves and their family members, and information about residence and employment, and even organizations and associations that you're affiliated with. So let's say you volunteer at a nonprofit, you have to include that information. You have to include the dates, from this month to that month that you volunteered. I mean, lots and lots of information. And then, as I mentioned, time outside the US, if you're making trips outside the US, you'll have to document all that, marital history, etc. And let me just give you an example that I remember. There is a question, and I may not be giving you the exact words, but the question goes like this. Have you ever been arrested, cited, or detained by a law enforcement officer? Okay. I was never arrested, never detained, but I had a traffic citation. It was not alcohol related, it was not a DUI, it was just, a simple traffic citation. And so I sat with the question and I thought, well, I have never been arrested, never been cited, never been detained, but I have a traffic citation. How do I answer this? Well, I'm not a lawyer, although I've worked very closely with lawyers. So don't take this as legal advice, but I answered yes. Because it was, have you ever been arrested, cited, or detained? So I answered yes, and then I had to go to the city of Madison, the municipal building, and get the records of the fact that I paid the citation. It was paid in full, on time, and that the case is closed. I had to get the document, get it certified, and submit it with my application that I have paid my traffic citation. So that's the kind of record keeping that you have to do, because at the end of the day, if somebody thinks that, okay, I've never been arrested, I've never been detained, well, traffic citation, if you think it's not important, Well, if you omit that, you're signing it under the penalty of perjury. You know, people can get in trouble. So anyway, I had to spend a lot of time, me and my mom both, going through all the details and everything, and sitting down with a very, intelligent, very professional lawyer who rechecked everything. And then we filed the paperwork, and obviously everything went well, which is why we're US citizens. And that's why I say, on one hand, this is what legal immigrants go through. And I'm not complaining about it, because I think people need to be vetted. People need to behave properly once they're legal immigrants and heading towards naturalization. They have to be productive individuals in society, because that's what we want. When we welcome immigrants, that's the kind of people we want. We want law-abiding individuals. And this is the kind of paperwork that people will have to go through. But on the other hand, we have people crossing the border, 9+ million since 2021. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they're from. We don't know their criminal background. We don't know their history. And so on one hand, you have the entire bureaucracy, all the policies, all the procedures in place for the legal immigrants. Once again, I'm not complaining, because I think all those steps are very, very necessary, because you want to vet people. But then you've got the open border, and people are coming in, and we don't know who they are. We don't know why they're here. So that brings me to Biden's border crisis. Over 9 million illegal immigrants entered the US since 2021. And let me tell you what the Democrats, they enjoy doing it, I think. They're pretty good at it. They like to come up with different words and terms to normalize illegal immigration. Let me give you 2 examples. So when an illegal immigrant is apprehended by Border Patrol at the southern border, it's called an apprehension, right? It's an apprehension, number of apprehensions, we track that in the news. But it's no longer called an apprehension. Do you know what it's called now? Do you know the term that the Biden folks came up with?
Newcomers.
I'm gonna get to that. That's next. It's an encounter. They call it an encounter. I mean, it sends very different messages. If you read the Border Patrol apprehended 10,000 illegal immigrants versus the Border Patrol encountered 10,000 illegal immigrants. And now, to your point, they don't even call it illegal immigrant anymore. They call it newcomers. So going from Border Patrol apprehended 10,000 illegal immigrants, Border Patrol encountered 10,000 newcomers. That changes the tone. And that's what they do. That's what the Democrats do. They're good at that. But we should continue to use the terms illegal immigrant and illegal aliens. We should continue to use those terms. And we should continue to say apprehended and not encounter. And so sanctuary cities and states are spending tax dollars on illegal immigrants. We all know that. And I'm going to share with you some information here. I have some notes. Let me start with New York City, the big sanctuary city. It is estimated that New York City will have to spend approximately $10.6 billion through June of 2026 to deal with the migrant influx. Here's the other interesting thing. Have you heard that New York City is giving prepaid cards to the migrants? Let me tell you more about it. So New York City, the officials are handing out prepaid cards to migrant families so that they can go out and shop. Okay? And New York officials are saying that those cards are only for food and baby supplies. Okay? Only for food and baby supplies. Now, the obvious question is, how do you make sure that the migrants are spending it on just food and babies. First of all, they shouldn't be getting a single dollar, okay? That's just, I mean, that's the main point. But because the prepaid cards are being given, okay, the follow-up question is, how are you going to make sure that the money is spent on food and baby supplies? Do you know how? How they're ensuring that the money is used properly? They're making the illegal immigrants sign an affidavit. So, individuals who entered the United States illegally, they violated our nation's laws and rules. Do you think they care about what's written in an affidavit? So that's the New York liberals' way of solving problems. They're making illegal immigrants sign an affidavit. Okay. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, she proposed allocating $2.4 billion to pay for migrant housing, food, medical services, and also legal services. If you have a legal question and you need to talk to a lawyer, and which I did because I had an immigration lawyer, I had a few other lawyers for contract-related questions and other property-related issues. And from my experience, they charge anywhere from $300 to $400 per hour. I once had a question, and I sent that question to an attorney, and I got a response back, a memo, along with a bill for $1,000. That's okay, because they invest a lot in their education, they invest a lot in their training, and lawyers and doctors, they have to go through continuous education, as I understand. And so, obviously, if you're getting expert advice, then it comes with a price tag. But we pay out of pocket when we have legal questions and we seek help from a lawyer. New York Governor Kathy Hochul wants the American taxpayers to pay for legal services for the illegal immigrants. I mean, think about it. These folks have entered the United States illegally. These folks are getting prepaid cards by signing an affidavit that most probably don't care about. And somebody, so I was presenting at a different event on Saturday, and somebody pointed out that, well, maybe a lot of those illegal immigrants can't even read English, can't even read what's written on the affidavit. So if the document needs to be translated, who's paying for the translators? The American taxpayers. And so illegal immigrants, they are here violating our nation's laws. They are getting legal services paid for by taxpayers. But if you and I need a lawyer, we have to pay out of pocket, usually by the hour, and it costs hundreds. So I mean, just think about the dysfunction in Sanctuary City of New York, but that's not the only one. Chicago is another one. And the other thing is, have you heard that some communities are urging the American citizens, the residents, to house migrants, like help out these families, bring them into your homes? It's an attack on property rights. Our property rights will be gone if you let migrants into your homes. And so, also, as you see on the slide, okay, before I get to that, Denver, Colorado, another big city that's helping out the illegal immigrants by giving taxpayer dollars, they are looking at, just because Denver loves illegal immigrants, the liberal officials there, they are looking at a budget deficit of $180 million. And that's going to happen. The numbers will be different, but that's going to be the financial situation that all the sanctuary cities will be in if this crisis goes on. And so the Democrats, they want to provide a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants. We know that. Because in 2022, Chuck Schumer proposed it. Chuck Schumer proposed a pathway to citizenship for I think it was 11 million at the time, illegal immigrants. Now I immediately, when I saw that news, I just took out my pen and paper, I started writing, and I sent an op-ed to the Western Journal and they published that. But that's the end goal, that's what they want to do. They want to create new voters.
Yeah.
So guess what El Paso County, and this is not El Paso, Texas, this is El Paso County in Colorado. This is something very interesting that I'm going to share with you. The El Paso County Board of Commissioners, they took a bold step. So what Denver was doing is, and I think they're still doing it, because Denver is getting so many illegal immigrants, because they're so enticing illegal immigrants by giving them all these free services paid for by taxpayers. So Denver, because they can't handle the pressure anymore, they're giving illegal immigrants government-funded bus passes to go and populate other communities in Colorado. And so that's how, I think, some migrants started showing up in El Paso County in Colorado from Denver. And so the El Paso County Board of Commissioners, they organized a press conference and they declared that the county will not be a sanctuary for illegal immigrants. And not only did they do that, the County Board of Commissioners also asked the nonprofits to not help the illegal immigrants. They said, don't invite the crisis. And so I believe that that's the kind of action that local leaders should take nationwide. And I'm going to share a few more examples from Colorado. Aurora, Colorado City Council also passed a resolution stating that it has no intention of helping migrants transported to their community from nearby municipalities. Another city in Colorado, named Monument, Colorado, declared itself a non-sanctuary city. Mesa County, Colorado, declared itself a non-sanctuary county. Garfield County, Colorado, declared itself a non-sanctuary county. City of Montrose, Colorado Springs, all declared non-sanctuary. And I think the same should happen in communities nationwide. Cities, towns, villages, counties, the leaders should declare that we're not going to be sanctuary. And they should not wait for migrants to show up. Be proactive. So I don't know if there are local elected officials in the room, but if you talk to elected officials in your area, ask them, don't wait for migrants, declare your community a non-sanctuary. Just make it public, do a press conference, pass a resolution, make it public, that if illegal immigrants are coming to our community, they're not going to get $1 in government funds. Because the government doesn't have any money, it's taxpayer money, right? So the government says, oh, we're going to give money. No, you're not giving anything, because it's our money. And so I think elected officials in cities, villages, towns, counties should be proactive in making this declaration and make it public that if illegal immigrants are coming to our community, they're not getting any taxpayer-funded benefits. And ask the nonprofits to not help the illegal immigrants. Because there are enough needs in the American population. There are American veterans who are homeless. There are many families who are at risk of homelessness. There are many American children living in poverty, many individuals with disabilities, many senior citizens who are struggling because of food insecurity. So we have a lot of needs. We're going to help the American citizens and legal immigrants, those who are here legally. We will not help illegal immigrants. So I think, if you talk to your elected officials, just, your city council members, village board members, town board members, county board members, tell them. And ask your friends who are living in other places to do the same. I'm just one voice, but I'm being as vocal as I can. We should ask our elected officials. Now, I live in the city of Madison, so I can talk to my elected officials. I don't know if they'll listen to me, but that's not going to discourage us. We need to talk to our elected officials, local elected officials, because the Biden administration, they created this crisis. I don't see any indication of the Biden administration, looking to secure the border. They won't. And each day, more and more illegal immigrants are coming in. As I said, more than 9 million illegal immigrants. I actually looked at another estimate that said more than 10 million. And so each day, this crisis is getting worse. And so if the Biden administration is not going to take action, then the local elected officials in communities across the country will have to take action, and they'll have to say, we reject illegal immigration. If illegal immigrants show up, we're not going to give them a single penny in taxpayer-funded benefits, and we're asking the nonprofits to not help these people out. Because we want to help the American citizens. There are lots of unmet needs. We have to help our own people. So that's my message. And so, as I already mentioned, non-sanctuary counties don't ask the nonprofits not to help them out and prioritize the American citizens. So what I have been doing, I wrote since 2019 more than 100 letters to editors and op-eds. And Vicki, you mentioned the list. Thank you for doing that. So I continue to write because I believe in the power of the pen. And so I continue to exercise my First Amendment right, and I write letters to editors and op-eds that get published in many newspapers across the country, and I also write blog posts. So there are things that I'll write that I'll publish on my website directly. And then I have a podcast, Explore and Engage with Anam, and I've published more than 200 episodes of that. And in recent months, I started making the podcast episodes available in video format on YouTube. And my YouTube channel, it's still in its infancy because I have just over 1,100 subscribers, but it has grown significantly. Maybe last year, I don't remember, but I was probably well under 400. So it has been growing, especially since November. And I continue to publish more and more podcast episodes in video format. And what I have also been doing, and this is what I wanted to share with you, I have been doing live streams almost every night since January. So I announced it a couple hours ahead of time that I'm going to be doing a live stream at 9 p.m. And I have people from California, from New Mexico, from Arizona, from a lot of border states, Texas, who tune in and they talk to me. And I usually have some talking points that I want to discuss, but I encourage people to talk to me in the live chat window. And so they ask me questions, they share information about what's going on in their community and what they are seeing in the border states. And I have people from New York and Chicago, they also tune in. So my channel is growing, and more people are tuning in to watch my live stream. And sometimes when I'm busy out and about, I just park my car. If it's 9 p.m. and I'm still outside, I'll park my car someplace safe, and I'll probably do a 15, 20 minute, half-hour live stream from my vehicle because I don't want to be disconnected. So I have been doing that, and when I started it, I didn't realize whether it would be successful or not, but people tune in, and there are folks who tune in every day almost. And so we talk about, who's going to be Trump's VP. We talk about, I talked a lot about Trump versus Nikki Haley. Those were entertaining live streams. Very entertaining.
It's most interesting.
Yeah.
You're talking about.
Yeah, I have, so you should go watch those. Whenever I talk about Nikki Haley, and it's just that I was shocked that she went on for so long, and I kept saying, you know what, Nikki Haley, she was the ambassador, to the UN, U.S. ambassador to the UN. She was the governor of South Carolina, a very inspiring figure for a lot of young women I know. And so, I said, but Nikki Haley, it's not your year.
No.
And I said the same for Ron DeSantis, and I said the same for Vivek Ramaswamy. I would love to see them in 2028. So anyway, I discussed Nikki Haley's presidential run a lot, and it would get so entertaining, and sometimes I would just, laugh and pause. So anyway, you can go watch those episodes, but I discussed what's going on in Wisconsin. I talked about in Madison, we're looking at a $27 million budget deficit in the city of Madison. And when I found that out, I did an episode on that. And I said, well, I hear a lot of talk about, okay, how are we going to fix this $27 million deficit? Are we going to raise taxes or raise fees? I want to know how we got there. What are you spending the money on? That's what I want to know, City of Madison. So I talk about local issues, I talk about statewide issues in Wisconsin, but a lot of my issues are of national importance. So mostly presidential election, all the ridiculous things that the Biden administration is doing, like going after home appliances. I discuss all of that. And then I talk about the border crisis also. And so please, if you want to follow my YouTube channel, you can do that. You can just look up Tausif Anam. There may be more than one Tausif Anam, but you'll see. I've got a picture there, you'll recognize me. I've got just over 1,100 subscribers, so please connect with me. Sandy. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Anytime.
Have you heard anything about how one of the angles that they're trying to do is bringing in all these illegals is for the census numbers so they can get more populated and they get more electoral concentration?
Yeah. It's all about how the dollars are going to be.
Well, because they don't have to be legal for them to count in the census, and so that's going to give them, it's going to tip the scales.
For a variety of reasons, the Biden administration opened up the border.
Yes.
For a variety of reasons. Because if millions and millions come in like they have, then the next question becomes, how do you deport them? It becomes a huge administrative challenge. And so, I mean, it is a mess. It is a crisis, I mean, probably the worst kind of crisis that we're facing.
This may sound really trite. Could you get on Rogan? Joe Rogan?
Who, me?
Yes. I just listened to Riley Gaines, and she talked about being hassled in Milwaukee. I had no idea. I think there are such an age group that needs to hear the truth. Because I think they get the opposite of that in other ways.
So if Joe Rogan invites me, my answer is yes, I'm going. But I don't know if Joe Rogan would invite me. I don't know, he might, I don't know. I've never met him. So.
But he's had Jordan Peterson on.
I would love to, so.
You should.
Your question is so wonderful because you basically said what I was going to talk about in my next slide. Help me spread my message. That was my next slide. I love to share my story. Whether it's a 15-minute quick talk without PowerPoint, I'm happy to do that. If it's an hour-long presentation, 2-hour-long presentation, I'm happy to do that. Because I think I have a story and I have thoughts that I want to share, which I've shared with you already today. And there are so many other things. Like I said, if I talk about the N400 application for nationalization, I could talk about that just for 1 hour, just about that. If you want to hear about all the steps I had to go through to get to my naturalization, the biometric and the civics test and the English test, I can talk about those in details. So I'm giving you, it's still, I mean, I've spoken for an hour, I think, but I'm still giving you a very quick overview of everything. But I can go into details of each and every single one of these topics. So if there are in-person speaking opportunities, you know, I'm happy to speak. I will be speaking at the 2nd Congressional District Caucus. That's my congressional district. I'm the speaker there, so I'll be talking about immigration. And it's still not confirmed, but I may be talking about immigration at a Lincoln Day dinner that's coming up a few months from now, but it's not been confirmed yet. So, you know, there are some speaking opportunities that I have that are coming up, but I'm happy to speak in front of any group. And I'm happy to answer any questions, please.
Do you know much about the humanitarian parole program? Oh, I'm sorry.
You asked about the humanitarian parole program.
It's for 2 years for the 5 countries, Ukraine, Haiti.
I don't know the details. I don't know the details. I mean, there are so many different programs and different policies.
They're allowed legal entry, but it's a 2-year limit. And I called the immigration lawyer, and because the program's so new, they don't have a path forward, there's not even a paper they can fill out to continue. And when they get here, it took 4 to 6 months to get work permits, so they're here to work 2 years, but now, a year goes by, and I'm just wondering if you do anything.
Not in particular about that program, but what I'll tell you is that in general, there's so much of lack of transparency in government, and the directives, the suggestions that the government publishes in their different documents, a lot of those are vague. So it's very difficult for just a non-lawyer individual to sit down and understand all the details. And so it's almost always you need a lawyer, and sometimes even the lawyers have difficult time figuring out what's going on. Yeah, so this is just a problem in government in general. There's lack of transparency, and it's very vague. Everything's so vague. But I'll find out more. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Wait, I got one right.
Do you support DACA to get young people a path to citizenship?
I have been trying to find the answer to that. I have been thinking about that a lot. And it is so complex. And see, that tells me that there are some problems. And once you have those problems, it's just, how do you find a solution? Because the DACA individuals, a lot of them came when they were kids. And so they were brought in, no fault, right, of their own. But what do you do with them? But if you do any kind of amnesty, right, any kind of amnesty, then that opens the door to other amnesties. So this is exactly what the Democrats are trying to do. They're trying to create problems that are nearly impossible to solve, okay? And when you try to solve them, it seems unkind, but we have to make tough decisions. So that's why they opened the doors and let in 9 plus, 10 plus million people, because now if you want to deport, how much of personnel are you going to need to deport 9 plus million people? So they are creating problems that are almost impossible to solve. And the Democrats are doing it purposefully because, and their actions are destroying our country. So I really don't know the answer to that, what the right answer is. But what I do know is that the Democrats make a lot of promises to the folks in the DACA program, right? But when they have power, when the Democrats have the presidency and the House and the Senate, they don't deliver. So they just keep the DACA folks hanging forever. So, and like the Democrats make a lot of other promises, right? I mean, I don't think that the government should just hand out taxpayer dollars and forgive all student loans. That's wrong. I am paying for my student loans. I am being a responsible individual. I took out the loan, I'm paying it back. I don't think the government should just, like, here's a bunch of money, let's forgive all student loans, okay? But that's what the Democrats promise because they want to drive the voters to the ballot box. But then when they have the power, they don't really deliver. They'll do a few things here and there. They'll put out some messaging bills. They'll make some statements and do some press conferences. But they actually never deliver things even to their voters because they keep the crisis going to turn people, to get out the votes. So anyway, I mean, they're not really freedom-loving. We are freedom-loving conservatives. We are freedom-loving Americans, and that's why we can make bold statements and we can proudly and vocally say what we believe because we're not sugarcoating anything. We're just telling the truth. That's what we do as conservatives.
Then how do Americans that are leaning to the left, how can they not see this? Is it in the education system? Is it there's so many news stations that are liberal? Exactly. But there's just so many things that are factoring into the ignorance of this subject, and there's so many subjects that need a deep dive. I got so many questions, but I'll do that one for now.
I think a lot of people are starting to realize I mean, there are voters out there who are going to vote Democrat no matter what. I mean, that's how they think, that's how they're programmed. When I came to the US, I didn't grow up a Republican or a Democrat. The political system is different in Bangladesh. The political parties are different. But for me, I didn't really have to sit and think. I didn't have to, draw lines and put all the pros and cons and put all the Democrat values, Republican values. I didn't have to do anything like that. I just saw, what political party supports the right to self-defense? The Second Amendment. Oh, the Republicans. That's me. And then what party supports life? The Republicans. It was very easy for me. And then over time, as I studied economics, as I studied political science, it just became more and more obvious that what the Democrats are doing, it just doesn't make any sense. And you see that now. So I wonder, you talked about the people on the left and if they are seeing things. I mean, so we have gas appliances, right? And so now that the Democrats are going after gas appliances, the Biden administration folks, do you think all liberals with gas appliances, are they going to like that? They're not. So, I don't want to make any prediction, but I think a lot of Democrats may actually sit at home. Maybe they're not ready to vote for Republicans, but they may just be so sick and tired that they're going to say, you know what, not going to vote in 2024. That may happen. That may happen. But doesn't mean we're going to slow down. We're gonna do our get out the vote on the Republican side. Sure, yeah. What's your question? You could just.
Okay. Where do you foresee all of these trials going with Donald Trump? And the other one is, if we stop declaring sanctuary cities, won't that just increase violence and theft?
Violence and theft, those problems are going up in sanctuary cities. Why did find so going from defund the police, the liberals went to deploying National Guard at New York subway stations. Why did they do that? Because crimes are going up in sanctuary cities in Chicago. People are afraid to go to Chicago. It's going to kill tourism. And so I think by declaring non-sanctuary, what the local communities will basically be saying is, if illegals are coming here, they should know that there's not going to be taxpayer-funded housing, food, medical services, legal services, and we're encouraging the nonprofits to stay away from helping illegal immigrants. It basically sends a message that don't expect free stuff.
And then what effect are all of these court cases against Donald Trump? How do you see that washing out?
So, obviously hard for me to comment because it's, those are legal issues, but all I know is, as a voter, every time I hear that they're suing Donald Trump, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna vote for him. My desire to vote, like I can't wait to vote for Trump becomes stronger. So that's gonna happen to a lot of voters out there. The more cases that throw at Trump, the more chances of his success, I think.
I think we're running short on time,
Sure.
but we just got one more here.
Thank you. The first one quick thing that if you are not aware of, I think you should be for your podcast. I think it would be very interesting for people. There's a clip to look up, and you can look it up. Illegal immigrant warns journalist, soon you're going to know who I am. And in addition to the economic problems, and I'm from a rural area of North, Gillette School District this past year had 30 additional kids, non-English speakers. That is a big, my heart, I'm a teacher, I have sympathy, of course those kids should be in the schools, but that's a huge burden. But in addition to the economic problems, I think that we are guaranteed some sort, there's no way that terrorists have not taken advantage of this open border. There's absolutely no way, and something will happen. And I encourage you all, if you are not aware of that video, watch it. That's how blatant it is. That someone would tell a U.S. journalist, soon you will know who I am. So that's just, my question would be, why can't states sue the federal government for not doing its job? Why can't, just like we had a case against Obamacare, why can we not sue the federal government for not doing its job?
So, you know, the clip that you mentioned, I've heard about it, so I'm aware of that. And then, once again, legal questions are hard for me to answer, but I would just point to Governor Greg Abbott as someone who, being a state level official, he is doing the job that federal government should be doing. He's doing his best to secure the Texas border, and he is actually successful in many ways, which is why a lot of the crossings are now taking place in Arizona and California and not so much in Texas. And so, yes, we need strong leaders, but you know, the legal system is so complex that it's just hard for me. See, the problem that we have, it's the legal issue, obviously. You've got the immigration laws and rules and asylum laws and rules. But in many ways, it's a physical problem. You have to, like, physically make sure that people are not crossing over, right? And then all the laws and rules get involved. So I don't know. I don't know what the states can do, or if it takes time, because any legal process takes time, but folks are crossing every day. So, you know, the way I see it is, on one hand, you have freedom-loving Americans who want to secure the border and stop the flow of illegal immigrants, and on the other hand, you have far-left politicians, and they don't really love the country, which is why they kept the border open. So, and your point, let me just point something out, and this was actually the final thing I was going to say. So, the Democrats, they like to quote from the New Colossus on the Statue of Liberty. And I actually saw a news report, a Democrat mayor out west, he was trying to justify illegal immigration, and so he said, you know, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. But I'll tell you that these words don't apply to the illegal immigrants. Why? Because, as we know, a lot of these illegal immigrants, they are really not yearning to breathe free. They are yearning for taxpayer-funded benefits. They are yearning to take away our rights and freedoms. And many of them are yearning, as you pointed out, many of them are yearning to get involved in life of organized crime. So, you know, when Democrats, they try to justify illegal immigration, but by pointing to the New Colossus, I don't think these words apply to the illegal immigrants. They're not yearning to breathe free. They're yearning for a life of dependency, which will be funded by American taxpayers. That's what they want. So, anyway. So, wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to Inform Women. I appreciate it. And you've got my cell phone number, you've got my email address, and my website. As I said, my website is kind of going under construction, so maybe in 2 or 3 days it'll be up and running again. But you can, if you give me your email address, I'll add you to my e-newsletter, which I send out a couple times a month, not every day. So you'll receive maybe weekly or once every 15 days an e-newsletter from me with updates. You can call me if there are speaking opportunities. I'm happy to come and share my thoughts with group, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel and tune in for my live streams if you can. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.